Hi, folks. Thanks so much for checking into the Neutral Zone Hotel. We are an unapologetically left-leaning podcast that explores hockey at its best and worst. My name is Benjamin. My pronouns are he, him. I'm a fan of the Montreal Canadiens and the Ottawa Charge, and I'm joined by a couple of my co-hosts, starting with Emily.
What's up, everyone? I'm Emily, they, she. I am a Colorado Avalanche and Buffalo Sabres fan.
And we've also got Trevor.
Hi, Trevor here. Pronouns he, him. As Benjamin said, we cover hockey at its best, a fan of Vancouver Golden Eyes, and worst, fan of the Vancouver Canucks.
Well, Trevor, it could be worse. You could have flipped off a TSN camera this week.
So true.
Yeah. I don't have $5,000 to give them, so it's a good thing I didn't. Well, I'll save that for all the other cameras around.
The good news is that these punishments are now apparently the province of the Department of Players Safety, which means that you could get the maximum allowable by the CBA. I don't think you are signed for as much as William. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't believe you are signed for as much money as William Nylander.
No, last time I checked, I think just a little bit behind.
Just a little bit behind. So you probably wouldn't get charged as much money, which is for the best. Let's just be honest. It's for the best.
Yeah.
To be honest, if they fine me for every time I flipped off a middle finger, I'd be broke in like 10 seconds flat.
I'm just so glad we have George Peros on the case, keeping us safe from a middle finger, because, man, I don't know what would happen if that behavior was allowed to be out there unchecked.
Yeah, gratuitous Jacob Trouba headshots or a middle finger, what do you think is a worse punishment? Or worthy of a worse punishment, I should say.
I think that if it starts with one middle finger and then you get two and then somehow you get three, and that's when we really have to start asking questions.
We sure do.
Oh, we all just went there, huh?
Yep.
All right, folks. I'm glad we had a little laugh to kick this off. I thought that would be a fun little chuckle for us because we are going to talk about some pretty heavy topics. So we are going to start by discussing USA Hockey's new policy around gender inclusion. Spoiler alert, it's not around gender inclusion at all. We're going to say straight up, this episode is going to have conversations about transphobia, the current regime in the United States, and the executive orders they're using to discriminate against transgender people. We are going to talk about the impact of this on cisgender people as well, because it does impact cis people. And we're going to talk about how hockey's most famous transphobe right now is celebrating with a new endorsement with another group. So if you don't want to listen to that, folks, I recommend that you kind of maybe turn this one off. We're going to talk about Heated Rivalry after. So maybe we can get a magic voice here saying when Heated Rivalry is going to show up.
1 hour, 8 minutes, 17 seconds.
So that's probably the voice of SJ saying when we got to Heated Rivalry. But yeah, this one's going to be tough. So it was announced a few days ago that USA Hockey in November quietly approved a participant eligibility policy. I'm reading the Ian Kennedy article on the Hockey News. That features a ban of transgender athletes from many programs. This reverses the 2019 policies, with new regulations set to come into force the latter of the conclusion of the USA Hockey National Championships for each age classification, or April 1st, 2026. Quote, the vast majority of USA Hockey programs are co-ed and not restricted by sex, and therefore all hockey players are eligible without regard to their sex, gender identity, transgender, non-binary, or other status or forms of gender expression. However, it then says that some of the programs under this blanketed vast majority have those restrictions in their internal rules, restricting events to male and female. The second point bans all transgender athletes from participating in USA Hockey sanctioned teams or events for programs restricted by sex, including girls' hockey programs that are restricted to female athletes in the age classifications 19 and under and below, high school programs that are restricted to either male or female players, and adult hockey teams, leagues, or events that are restricted to male or female players. In all programs where participation is restricted by sex, athletes are only permitted to participate in such programs based on their sex assigned at birth, except that a female as assigned at birth may not play in programs restricted to females if they have undergone any male hormone therapy. This ban extends to USA Hockey's national team programs for all IIHF, IOC, and World Para Ice Hockey events. All right. That's a lot. It's a lot of words. But what it comes down to is you are restricted based on your gender assigned at birth, as long as you're not a transgender man who has gone through hormone replacement therapy. So on one hand, you have them saying, obviously, we don't think any of that you can change genders, any of the science works. And on the other hand, they're saying, well, the science, it works. Let's just get some general thoughts. Emily, Trevor, who wants to weigh in first?
I mean, it follows sort of the trajectory of the way things have been going in the US recently with, being just blatantly transphobic. At a time when, there are people who are trying to grow the game and get more people involved, and we're trying to increase representation and everything, it's a massive step back. The 2019 policy wasn't perfect, but it was something, and we've just thrown all of that away. We have effectively outright banned trans men from participating in hockey at all. And trans women are forced to be misgendered if they want to continue playing. And, they say, well, it doesn't impact the bulk of these things because so many of them aren't gendered. But how many girls are playing on boys' teams because there aren't girls' teams around and they've been allowed to play? And what's that going to do? Like, ignoring the transphobia aspect of it, which is just like blatant and horrific and makes me so angry, it's going to keep young girls out of hockey, because if their only way to play is on a boys' team, they're no longer allowed to play there. And I don't think this is going to miraculously create a bunch of girls' teams for these people to play in. So I think, in addition to being wildly transphobic, it's also going to have long-term repercussions on the women's hockey pipeline in the United States. And that sucks, on top of all of the transphobic bullshit that it is.
I think that's put very succinctly, and you saying or mentioning the girls that played on boys teams just made me think of, like, you hear all the stories about through the PWHL about all those girls that had to play on the boys teams in order to keep competing all throughout up until like university. And just the main body that we see in terms of being the face of hockey is the National Hockey League. And they've been saying for years that hockey is quote unquote for everyone. And this has been abundantly proven false, at least according in the eyes of USA Hockey. And it's fucking abysmal. Just, I hate every aspect of it, obviously. And I can't help but feel just horrible for everyone who is affected. And even if in their eyes, maybe it's a quote unquote small population, guess what? That's still a population that you are affecting and just mistreating because of either your own archaic views of the world or just cowering because of someone else's archaic views of the world.
I think it is important to say that this policy is wrong. It is bigoted. It is horrifying. You know, I love hockey. When I think back to being young, one of my favorite memories is watching hockey with my dad. They would let me stay up to the first period, and we would watch the Montreal Canadiens game usually, which was often on French language over the air network. I remember tuning into an AM station at 1 a.m. to listen to the overtime, the multiple overtimes for the 1996 Colorado Avalanche Stanley Cup wins. I remember Patrick Waugh winking during the Cup run in 93. I remember in 2001, I watched that whole thing. I remember the skate in the crease. I remember the 98 Olympics. I remember the women and men losing for Canada. And I remember them both winning in 2002. I've seen NHL games in person. I was there for the first ever PWHL game in Canada. I love this sport. I love what it can bring. I hate that there are people in an organization called USA Hockey who have decided that if you are someone who is vulnerable, who needs a community, who needs people to stand up for you, because you are a transgender person who, not easy in the way our world is currently structured. I hate that they're saying, no, we don't want you. Go away. There is no doubt in my mind that whatever the perceived harms are from the inclusion of transgender athlete in sports of any gender or style, it is vastly outweighed by the social growth and possibility that it brings. And, if you dig through the science enough, you will find that there really is no threat to the integrity of these programs. And I did briefly consider asking a friend of mine who's PhD in genomics and is a transgender person, specializes in this stuff, to join. But it's not about that. It's not about the science. This is not about, these people are not reading peer-reviewed results. They're bigots making bigoted decisions out of a place of hatred and rawness in their heart. That pisses me the fuck off.
Yeah. And it's not even only at the highest level where they're saying, okay, well, we want to protect whatever so-called integrity of the this is beer league. This is saying your Wednesday night, we play at 11 p.m. It's, a bunch of middle-aged dudes beer league suddenly has a transphobic policy on who's allowed to be on your team. That's what gets me, is like, you can't even pretend like you're protecting the sanctity of the women's national team. Like, that would be bullshit if that was your justification. But this is a policy that impacts every single team that's registered under USA Hockey. So it's little kids, and it's beer leagues, and it's people who are playing for love of the game, who are now being told they don't belong, they don't have a place in this sport. And it's infuriating.
Absolutely. We know for a fact that this is impacting beer leagues and adult leagues across the country. One of our Discord users posted a letter from one of those leagues located in the Western United States, noting that USA Hockey told them specifically that this was a new rule to comply with Executive Order 14201, which is titled Keeping Men Out of Women's Sports, from February 5th, 2025. This is specifically a executive order signed by the current president of the United States. It's a really gross order. Not just from a perspective of being transphobic, but the actual wording is gross. specifically Section 3, Preserving Women's Sports and Education, where it requires organizations to protect all female athletic opportunities and locker rooms, which, as we know, means genital inspections for children, which is an absolutely disgusting thing to suggest. It also says, quote, prioritize enforcement actions against educational institutions that deny female students a quote unquote equal opportunity to participate in sports and athletic events by requiring them in the women's category to compete with or to appear unclothed before males. So not only does it say, not only are these rules saying things like, they're not saying we're concerned or we don't care about the science. What they are saying is that if you are a transgender woman, you are actually not a woman at all. You are a male, regardless of whatever part of your transition you're in, regardless of however you present to the world. It doesn't matter. And if you were to be in a woman's locker room, we have to do enforcement against you. That is the policy that USA Hockey is currently changing their rules to agree with. Now, this particular league that we saw the email for, quote, as a board, there's zero intention or desire to comply with this new policy. So it sounds like, especially in areas that are more progressive, it sounds like there is going to be pushback from the local level. And I think that's extremely good.
Mm-hmm.
Hockey is a rich person's sport. So I think that we're likely to see a lot of pushback from progressive areas because that's how it goes.
I hope it's enough pushback that it gets them to change the policy. I want to believe that there's enough of a community that's going to push back, but
one thing as well, as you mentioned, is in that email too, it mentions that one of their ideas on how to push back is to secede from USA Hockey. And it reminds me a lot of the BCHL and what we talked about last year with after the whole Hockey Canada stuff went down, where 5 of the teams from that Alberta Junior League said, screw it, we don't want to be a part of Hockey Canada anymore. Let's go join the BCHL so we can get away from this.
Yeah. And there were provincial regulatory bodies also considering exiting Hockey Canada and did for a while withhold funds until the board was completely changed. So there's the possibility for that. My reading of the political situation in the United States is that there will not be a change of this policy until there's a change in the presidency.
yeah.
But it will require pressure to be put on USA Hockey so that they're ready to change their policy as soon as the leadership of the country changes.
It's still just cowardice. It's all cowardice.
Yeah. USA Hockey Board. I should have looked this up. I apologize. Who's on the board of USA Hockey? Let's take a look here. The president is Mike Trimboli. The treasurer is Donna I can't pronounce it. Guariglia, John Tobin, Keith Barrett, Chris Knaus. Okay. That's a name that I do recognize. Julie Chu is an athletic director. She's not even in the country anymore. Al Montoya.
I also was I would like to believe that she was not involved in or in favor of this policy.
Dawn Gould is the vice president girls council chair. So the vice president for girls council chair is a guy. Great start.
Shocking. Who could have seen that coming?
Great start. That's not to say that men can't do good jobs in these positions, but I think, oh man, I'm reading an article about this and it's a little quote, we knew it was important to have male voices in the conversation as well. We don't only want to empower women, we also want to empower men that are in the women's game and support the women's game.
Get the fuck out of here. Go away. Shut up.
Give me a break.
I'm not going to argue that it's a bad thing to tell men not, to support women. I think that's good, but come on.
Yeah, it's important that we don't hurt these men's feelings by saying that their voice isn't the most important in determining women's sports policy.
Yeah. So basically, taking a look here at the vice president level, there are 2 women on the board of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 total people at the vice president, treasurer, president level. Most of the directors at large are on the board are men. Bill Daly is on the board as a NHL director, and there are 2 women or 3 women who are athletic directors of 7 or 8. So let's just be honest. USA Hockey is run by dudes. It's run by old white men.
Yep.
Raise your hand if you are at all surprised by this revelation. And I'm just going to take a quick glance out in the audience. 0 hands. Okay, good.
No hands.
Excellent. I'm glad we are all in agreement on this. Oh, my God.
So downstream effects for this are, like we discussed, or like Emily highlighted, obviously, anyone who is a transgender man and has begun treatment can't play hockey anymore. If you are a transgender woman, you have to play in the men's leagues. If you are a girl and there are no girls' leagues near you, you can't play hockey. If you are a beer league that invites gender equality, you're going to lose the support of USA Hockey. It's a devastating blow for the concept that everyone can play. And I just want to take a moment to highlight the PWHL still does not have a gender inclusion policy.
Yep.
Never mind that they've been promising that since like day 1 of the league.
For all the flowers we like to give that league, that is an incessant blight upon it. Just a black spot.
My assumption is that they wanted to wait for the 2024 election before deciding what would happen. And
the current CBA isn't up until like 2030, right?
2031.
Okay, so yeah, they just say, okay, well, we're just going to coast until the next CBA and that'll be part of it or something. But that's also insane to be like, well, we're just going to have this league be almost a decade old before we roll that out.
I think they would have wanted there to be electoral unanimity between Canada and the United States, but that hasn't happened. Canada has a left-wing government-ish. Don't yell at me. I don't want to talk about Mark Carney's exact leanings, but
it's certainly left of the United States.
Well, it's left of the United States, and it's left of Pierre Poilievre, who is the leader of the Conservative Party and has embraced anti-transgender talking points in the past. So if they had 2 left-wing governments, okay, we know that for 4 years we can get away with this policy, a more open policy. If it goes the other way, okay, we've got 2 governments that are anti-trans, we'll do an anti-trans policy. My guess is they feel stuck right now, and this is entirely a political calculation for them. Because let's be honest, there are at this current time, even though there has been one transgender player, there was one transgender player in the CWHL in the past, and there was obviously Harrison Brown as well, who did not medically transition until after he finished his pro hockey career. But at this time, there are no transgender women banging on the door to get into this league that we know of. There's none in the NCAA. There weren't before this horrible executive order was passed, because transgender people are a small percentage. It is hard to become a professional athlete and deal with the challenges of transitioning, especially in the United States. This was not like from their perspective, they're probably thinking answering this question will cause us more political hassles than leaving it up in the air, which is an inherently cowardly thing to do.
Yep. but I think you're probably onto something there. And it's not like there's a large push for it. There are people who are asking about it, but it's not like the entire fan base is saying, hey, where's this policy? We're not gonna spend money on tickets until you have it, or whatever. So I think they have relatively low pressure to get it done, and it's easy for them to just sort of sit and wait.
It's not far from the joke we made about Gary Bettman last week, where there is, there is this lack of a policy is a suggestion that the league is not as open to queer people, especially trans people, as they want to pretend to be. But the league's still taking their money, so it's okay, right?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not dissimilar to the way Gary Bettman has treated gay people.
Oh, yeah.
So there is that level of hypocrisy. Now, I don't particularly think the league is going to pass anything like this under the current political environment, because I think it would make it tough in Canada, and it would make it tough vis-a-vis the Canadian government and vis-a-vis Hockey Canada. But they very much want this to go away. And we can tell that because they keep quietly pushing the number one face of PWHL transphobia, which is Minnesota Frost forward Britta Curl-Salemme, who I'm going to call Britta Curl going forward. I don't care about her abbreviated last name. I'm sorry. I just don't.
Mm.
So I think everyone here knows Britta Curl. Not personally, but everyone knows who she is.
Thankfully, we don't know her personally.
Thankfully. Although maybe if we did, she wouldn't still be playing.
The game she was suspended, and she was sitting down kind of in like the little corner near where my seats are at TD Place. I was very tempted to throw spitballs at her.
Missed opportunity.
Just buy a bag of popcorn and just pop some kernels at her every so often.
I'm not, like, people were talking about it openly. When they realized that she was sitting, people were hissing at her. It was like, she is, I can tell you, the Ottawa Charged fan base, amongst many of the other fan bases, strongly dislike her.
Mm-hmm.
And
she is public enemy number one in the league.
That's right.
As she should be.
Yep. So Haley Salvian of the failing New York Times, the lead women's hockey writer for The Athletic, did an interview with Curl, and it was correctly pointed out that it's a little bit hagiographic. Praising her skill and her success, noting that Curl had liked posts that criticized Target for selling LGBTQ plus products, criticized vaccine mandates, and appeared to show support for the acquittal of Kyle Rittenhouse, who murdered 2 men and wounded a 3rd during unrest in Wisconsin following the George Floyd murder. A tweet sent in 2023 and I'm reading from The Athletic here, from Curl-Salemme's personal account, unambiguously supported the barring of transgender women from women's sports. So when you scroll through the article here, she does try to walk some of this stuff back. Quote, Curl-Salemme insisted that she used her likes to save her bookmark posts to read later, and she didn't necessarily agree with the views expressed.
Never mind that there is literally a bookmark feature on Twitter, so you don't have to do that shit.
Curl-Salemme clarified that she is and was vaccinated against COVID-19, which is a requirement to take part in Team USA's 2022 Olympic program. She says she believes in science, not conspiracy theories about vaccinations. Her issue was the division that occurred based on people's vaccine status during the pandemic. It's just about respecting others' decisions. I didn't think we needed more reason to hate each other. I regret the insensitivity that came across in some of the tweets I liked. These are real people, and it's going to hurt somebody to see that. So the article was considered a little bit hagiographic. I think Haley was probably walking a pretty clear editorial line on this one. She does put counterpoints up to everything that Curl says.
Yeah, I felt like it was fairly apparent that Haley wasn't buying anything that Britta was saying in her defense or apology, but had been sort of obligated by the failing New York Times to run this piece, because I think this was an exclusive. This was like The Athletic tells all Britta Curl not actually the transphobe that she's accused of being. And so I think she had to tell a story and did her best to sort of say, okay, so she's saying these things. Take that as you will.
The big sign of growth is that she went to a bar at a fundraiser. Quote, last month she attended a fundraiser at a bar of their own, a women's sports bar frequented by queer and trans women in Minneapolis. Great.
She went to a gay bar.
Yeah,
So-
maybe she might have walked in and then just got immediately booed out and said, cool, I'm done. But hey, guess what? You still walked in. You still get to say that you went in there.
One of the people that Haley talked to for her article was Ash Tifa, a legal consultant working for Outfront Minnesota, an LGBTQ plus advocacy group in the Twin Cities. And the article finishes on a quote from her saying, a lot of queer and trans folks are going to hold on to and have reason to hold on to her past comments. And it's going to be on her to bridge that gap. So I'm bringing that up because it came out today that Britta Curl has joined the Fierce Athlete team. The Fierce Athlete is a Catholic organization that espouses for trans exclusion in sport. So I have done you all the I've done the service of reading this website stem to stern. I've read every article on it today.
Oh, God.
Good Lord.
You
And-
are so brave.
I want to read you a few quotes about Fierce Athletes.
Oh, boy.
So this is one of the quotes they put on their front page. This is what they're using to sell their concept. So what they're selling, for reference, is they're selling merchandise, obviously, but they're also selling their team as featured speakers. So they're doing the speaker tour. You know, you spend some money, you get a speaker come out, tells you all a bunch of hateful things. They do podcasts, which I did not listen to the podcast. Do not ask me to listen to their podcasts. They do like prayer circles. And I just want, before I get into this, I want to say, I'm not a religious person. I do not believe in God. I'm certainly not Christian, but it's okay if someone is. I respect totally where people get their values from. But if your values are bad, then maybe you need to re-examine your religion. You have the right to have it, but I have the right to tell you that it's shitty.
Amen.
And I'm going to do a lot of that right here. So I'm going to read you this first one here from Alicia, former D1 basketball player. I realized the root of all my problems, hurts, and sin was not knowing what it truly means to be feminine.
Oh, God.
Doesn't that make you puke?
Yes, that makes me want to die.
You could,
What?
we struggle to understand our femininity while embracing our athletic bodies. We often turn every game into a competition because why not? Winky face
Because
emoji.
that's what it is. It's a competition.
I feel the need to point out that when they wrote that, they wrote, we often turn every game into a competition, open parentheses, because why not? Winky face emoji, but they're using the parentheses to close
Oh, no, it's
the
just like a double parenthesis. Oh,
No.
oh no,
they're
so
only
it's
using
just
the
a
semicolon.
Just a semicolon.
Just random. Oh, my God.
Ah.
Oh.
So it's bad copy editing on top of being terrible content. You're literally a professional athlete. Of course, every game is a competition, you dumb bitch.
To be fair, the company announced that Britta Curl is going to be one of their spokespeople. It was just no proofreading whatsoever. They did the classic apostrophe S for a word that does not require an apostrophe. Like, this is like grade 5 English class.
You would think if you're this educated and you're this smart on things, you would know. They have a picture here of Jennifer Say, whoever she is. I didn't look. I don't want to know. But she's wearing an XXXY t-shirt, and it's just really gross.
No.
So the best stuff was in their blog. Where did I find
God.
that? So their blog has a series of entries, including celebrating St. John Paul II, the athlete pope. And what is the rosary and why should we pray for it? And again, that's fine. Those articles are fine. They're just Catholic stuff, and that's fine. But there was an article from September 11th, 2023 called America Loves Authentic Female Athletes, where it talks about Megan Rapinoe, professional U.S. national women's soccer player Megan Rapinoe attempted to silence those who were critical of her team's early loss in the World Cup. In doing so, she claimed that the one thing America does really well is backlash. I think there's a huge backlash against women happening right now. We see it with the overturning of Roe v. Wade. We're also seeing it with the trans arguments in sports. And then they put in bold, on the contrary, Rapinoe's liberal ideology is far from the reality of how women are truly empowered and supported in our world today. There is no backlash against women in our culture. On the contrary, mothers who are choosing life are applauded and revered.
I cannot.
This is written by someone called Tracy Garrett. It actually says she played on an all-boys team for her Pee Wee basketball group, which you wouldn't be able to do under the new rules from USA Hockey. They noticed, so this one is gross, but the mask isn't off yet. Their most recent article is called Truth, Dignity, and the Courage to be Fierce. It's from January 22nd. They do not put names on this anymore.
Oh, good, because they don't want any of their people to be targeted for their transphobic bullshit.
Exactly. So, at their core, so it's about several court cases. I'm not going to get into that part.
Oh, God.
At their core, these cases ask whether the law should uphold biological reality or yield to an ideology that denies sexual difference in the truth of the human person. And then it starts talking about something called Christian anthropology. And
God.
I just want to shoot whoever says this into the sun in Minecraft. Christian anthropology is not a real thing. Anthropology is anthropology, and anthropologists will tell you that transgender people exist in all societies and across all cultures in human history.
I have lost so many brain cells just by listening to some of these posts. Holy
Seriously.
hell.
Because only some states have, at this time of writing, had passed laws or rulings similar to what the president put into his executive order. They call it the 23 states without protections for women's sports. Ridiculous. So
Absurd.
this is the type of people that Britta Curl is proving her growth with by associating with. And I wanted to take a moment to call that out because I think in this moment, I think it speaks very well to the fact that the PWHL knows. They know who she is inside. They tried to whitewash this a little bit, tried to make it go away, and she just can't help herself. She's now turned around and stepped on the next nearest biggest rake.
Yeah.
It should be noted too that some of that company's social media is followed by at least one other PWHL player and a PWHL hopeful. So it's like obviously it wouldn't just be her, even though she's by far the biggest name and easiest target to have headlights on for that. But don't be surprised if more either could become a part of it or come forward. And honestly, just let them, because I want to know who I need to absolutely despise.
Yeah. I mean, I guess at some point it's nice that people are being fully mask off with this, because then instead of wondering if one of your favorite players is actually a terrible person.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. And I think this is going to get worse before it gets better. There's just no way around that. We've got 3 more years under the current administration. I don't think there's a chance things change while that particular person is still in charge. And even if he decides to exit stage left earlier than his 2029 end of term, it's not going to get any better because the next guy's just as bad.
Yep.
All right, folks, we're going to cut here. Trevor is going to be interviewing a friend of his who I believe is a transgender hockey player in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
And we want to get a first-person view on what these sorts of policies feel like. Again, this is going to be raw, real, and emotional, so please take breaks if you need them. We understand this is a tough conversation for everyone to have. But when you come back after the interview, we're going to talk about Heated Rivalry. I promise we will talk about Heated Rivalry. I know how much you're all looking forward to that. All right. We will be right back.
Hey everybody, Trevor here. Welcome to our interview segment here. I'm joined today with a friend of a friend of a friend of mine who became a friend of mine. It's pretty great. This is Heather.
Hi, thank you so much for having me on, Trevor. My name is Heather. My pronouns are she, they. Let's see. I'm a fan of the LA Kings, unfortunately, and I'm just really happy to be here. Hey, I said unfortunately. Like, give me some credit.
You know what? I get it. It's funny because you and I have only known each other for a little bit, and I find it funny that as we were introduced to each other, it started just as we were really kind of learning to appreciate and admire the PWHL and just be filled with so much disappointment in the men.
Right. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I think you and I initially bonded over that because hockey had been something I kind of taken out of my life, unfortunately, because it was just becoming less relevant. And also just honestly, from a moral standpoint, I was becoming more and more upset with the NHL and a lot of their conduct. So the PWHL kind of being introduced into my life by my best friend Angeli, it's sort of it's reignited an interest in hockey again, and it's been really fun to just not only watch the league and just see an amazing job they've been doing so far, but also just helping Angeli kind of learn the game and also just kind of retrace my roots with the sport for the past decade.
Well, and especially too because that's how Angeli and I bond as well, because they have messaged me several times throughout the season about stuff. I've tried to explain here and there, but I know that they've got you to really help out with that. And Angeli's mentioned before how you both go ice skating once a week. You talk about the games and whatnot. So, and even then, you and I have also talked about some of the games and whatnot here and there too. So.
Oh yeah, absolutely. We love to go ice skating, and Angeli has taken a very big interest in women's sports all over the country and the world, and sort of showed me a lot of leagues that I'd never heard of. But the PWHL has been a bit of a pleasant surprise for me, just because it's fun to actually interact not only with the sport of ice hockey again, which I have a huge history for, but but it's just been really great to interact with it again, honestly, because I've really drifted away from the sport, honestly.
Which I guess helps tie in. So where I really want to start this discussion is, well, it's just kind of an overarching. We're going to be, we've talked, at least on the cast here, we've talked about the new bans that USA Hockey has put into effect when it comes regarding to transgender athletes on, quote unquote specified gender teams. And well, I feel like I don't need to say this, especially to people listening. You probably heard it before, but I think it's utter bullshit. I'm sure you can agree with this.
Yes, I do agree.
Shocker of all shockers. But I guess to really kind of get into, why I thought you'd be great to come on is what was your relationship and what's your story with hockey? What's your relationship with it?
Oh yeah, I'd love to share. So I first got into hockey in the year 2014. I vividly remember at this time I was about 15 years old, and I wasn't even close anywhere to being out of any sort of closet. And I was just playing a lot of high school men's water polo. And I remember I played water polo my whole life. I never really was super into it. I was kind of forced into it, but I wanted a athletic sort of interest that was outside of that I could kind of make my own. And I'll never forget, I decided one day just on a whim, like, I'm going to get into hockey. And my parents were longtime LA Kings fans. They were going to games in the Forum in the 80s with, Marcel Dion, Rogie Van Schaaen, all those kind of names. And they were like, well, you're going to be a Kings fan. And I'm like, okay, but we live down the street from the Ducks. And they're like, yeah, no, you're not going to be a fan of the Disney team. It's like, okay. So I became a fan of the LA Kings. Yeah. And what was so excellent about it is the night I became an LA Kings fan, I saw they were playing the San Jose Sharks. And I was like, oh, yeah, sweet, a game. What I didn't know was that the LA Kings were down 3-0 in that series. I didn't know how sports series worked. I just knew I was going to watch a hockey game that night.
Oh, I know exactly where this is going. Oh, no, yeah. I know exactly when you popped in.
Yep, and I witnessed the reverse sweep. I mean, that team was my favorite. Like Mike Richards, Jeff Carter was on that team, all Flyers guys, but they did the reverse sweep. Then you have the 7-game series against Anaheim. Then you have I'm getting chills just thinking about it. The 7-game series against the Blackhawks with the Martinez overtime winner. And then the other Martinez overtime winner. Like, if that's your intro to hockey, you fall in love with it instantly, especially if it's your team. Like, to just on a whim, I'm going to follow hockey and then just see the team go on to win the Stanley Cup in a matter of like 26 or 27 games. It was just like, that was a hell of an intro to the sport. And I was just obsessed at that point. And after watching it on TV, I realized, like, I want to play the sport. Like, this looks like so much fun. And it was really hard for me to break into the sport at first because my dad was my water polo coach. And he was at first very against me playing because if I get injured playing, in-house hockey, then it's going to affect my water polo career, at high school. My dad was my coach too. So there's the added bonus of that. But through continuing to engage with the sport, I finally was able to get my first pair of skates. I got some Bauer Vapors and, I was finally able to get equipment. And I finally, after a year, was able to get myself onto the ice in an in-house league. And I did that for about 3 seasons. I was not very good. It took me about 3 years to score my first goal. I was like nowhere on the score sheet. So it was something that, I had to build myself up to. But I developed this huge fixation and passion for hockey. And by the time I am entering college, I'm really getting focused in on hockey. I become friends with like certain hockey figures. Like I was actually really good friends with Jeremy from How To Hockey. I doubt he would recognize me if he saw me now because I look a little different these days with the hormones and all that. But
minor details.
But I actually got to meet the guy in the summer of 2017. He's a sweetheart. So if Jeremy ever hears this, like, I hope you're doing well. I hope his family's doing well. But I really loved playing hockey and watching it. It was just like my main obsession in my life. It was such a good competitive outlet for me too, because when I would play water polo, there was a lot of feelings of just not really wanting to be there. So I would, lose my temper in games, all sorts of, just, discipline sort of things. But in hockey I felt like was my own. And like, I had this love and this attachment for it. And I enter college and I end up joining, beer league teams. And by this time I'm doing a lot better, but it's a big jump going from playing an in-house with a bunch of teenagers to playing in beer league. And this, enters my my college years. And in my college years was when I came out as just as a gay man. And that coincided with being in the locker room. I started to notice sort of like little tensions, little things I hadn't picked up on before, where thankfully nothing was directed at me because I was very skilled at being closeted in those days. But being in the beer league, sort of hockey locker rooms, you would hear like the casual, homophobic or even like a transphobic comment. And it started to hit me where it was like, oh, okay, like, this sport has a culture that any sports culture suffers from, where there's, a lot of elements of like toxic masculinity and even sexism because we did have women who played on the teams with us. These were co-ed leagues, but the women were often targeted, and that was very kind of disturbing. So this was my first sort of intro to the sport suddenly, not being for everybody, which was very ironic because at the time the NHL had a diversity initiative called Hockey is for Everybody. And I even did a report on it in an English class. And I wrote about, I'll never forget, it was like 2018. I was like, hey, hockey's getting more diverse. And, I think the version of myself now would kind of scoff at that. But, I really wanted that sport to go in that direction. But back to, the women playing in the league, I would see them getting targeted and, just things that we would constitute as kind of like harassment being said in the locker room. And eventually I stopped playing because of the COVID lockdowns. So I was unable to play. And it was the COVID lockdowns that, forced me to kind of sit with myself for a long time. And that led to me as, coming out as a trans woman, changing my name to Heather. And at that point, I realized, there's probably not a chance I can get into a locker room anytime soon because I'm transitioning. It's going to be a lot to explain. This is probably something I'm going to have to hold off on. In hockey, playing it at least was definitely something that I was less and less focused on because my transition was more important because I was, focusing on more medical and social transition things, which that would be very hard to sort of integrate into a locker room. While this is going on, there's also a lot of separate NHL related controversies, the biggest being the Kyle Beach one. And that really struck like a serious sort of chord with me just because of my own life experiences and just, seeing how Gary Bettman, Bill Daley, the Wirtz family, even, I remember Joel Quenneville and Stan Bowman, if I think that's the son, right? Scotty's the dad. So,
yeah, Stan.
Sorry,
That is correct.
Stan Bowman. Just seeing the overall reaction, it's like, oh, this league is like not taking this seriously, and this is the most horrifying thing I ever heard. And I also had a very a personal, it hit me personally, just based off of life experiences. But I realized from that point on, it's like, yeah, this boys club thing in hockey, it's too much for me. And then of course there is, the events going on with Hockey Canada that really sealed the deal. And, I think the last time I checked on that, I think Carter Hart is still in the league. So it's like, okay,
yeah.
I can't interact with this anymore. And so hockey basically was kind of buried. The one thing that was this huge passion in my life really had to go into the back seat because there just was that notion of oh, it's not really the most welcoming environment for me to play in or for me even to follow the league, because not only would it be difficult to me to be in this locker room, but just, the league's precedents that they would set on, certain sort of social issues or things where, the right thing for them to do was so obvious and they couldn't do it. I just realized I can't get involved with this because this is this is really it was just messing with me, for lack of a better term. And I guess where this sort of leads up to is the present moment we're in right now with this trans hockey ban from USA Hockey, which I first heard about from the former pro hockey player Harrison Brown. He's also an actor, and he's in the show Heated Rivalry, and he does a really good job explaining this. But this ban has sort of it's really kind of crushed me in a way, because it's not like I was gonna be getting the skates and the pads on again and I was gonna play tomorrow, but it really did in many ways kind of shut a door on me where it's oh wow, there is no way for me to play because we can get into it, but the way that this band is sort of sanctioned, it's not just preventing people who are trying to go pro from playing in their respective gendered leagues or teams. This has a ripple effect on everybody, including adult leagues around the country, which every adult ice hockey league I ever played in was sanctioned by USA Hockey. And these leagues have to adhere to these rules, which don't allow me to play in an all women's league at this point. Because if I was going to play again, it would have to be in an all women's league. And just, we can get into the specifics, but that's not possible for me anymore. So it deeply hurts because now it just feels like the door is kind of shut in my face.
So you had posted for a bit on Instagram, and I think you and I had also messaged back and forth about how you were indeed looking at wanting to pick the game up again. And then when this news came out, it immediately, obviously, as you said, just got halted. Aside from the obvious, is because you did kind of talk about how it is going to affect you now, but like, you know, and what others, like, I'm guessing there might be other people you may know who would be affected. And just like also too, like how, like outside of the obvious, like what other effects, like the exclusion and whatnot, I guess if you could kind of elaborate on, especially like the feeling that when you first read that, just like the feeling that hits.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I think what really hit me the hardest was knowing that USA Hockey had, in my opinion, was the fairest compromise of a policy for allowing trans athletes to compete. I believe that their policy initially, just like I believe the IOC, was rooted in, like we want, if we want to have trans athletes compete, they're going to have to go through a series of hormone replacement therapy, because there is this idea that prevails unfortunately in society that trans people just wake up and decide like, hey, I'm going to be this, and my first goal is to like dominate NCAA basketball. And it's like, no, that's really not it. I'm just trying to be happy. And I know, right? It's so simple, and it does make you laugh, because
what a concept, huh?
Right,
what a concept.
right. And so I guess just like in terms of how I feel, to see them roll back on that, which in my opinion, I think that this is rooted in some sort of like, federal or even like presidential administration pressure, because I don't want to get too much into like to the politics of too many things like with the presidential administration, but they really are making a push on a nationwide scale to kind of invalidate trans people. This is just like another example of it, basically. And I think that USA Hockey just like buckled under some pressure that they perceived as serious, but in all reality, I don't think that they needed to make this move. I don't think that this would have shattered any sort of integrity in their game. And, there is the obvious of, okay, I can't, play in an all women's league at this point, but there is some real serious hard hitting complexities with this. The first being, if I do want to play, this is based off of sex assigned at birth, which my sex assigned at birth is male. I would have to play in a men's hockey league. That, to some people who aren't affected by that, might not see how big of a problem that is, but the problem is I'm how many years in my hormone therapy, and I have like a woman's body at this point. So if I'm going into a locker room and it's full of men, like there's going to be God knows what kind of scrutiny that's going to take place there. You know what I mean? And to make matters even worse, and to make USA Hockey look even dumber, in my opinion, for this, just reading over it one more time before it came on, I saw that if you are a trans man who has undergone the hormone therapy, then you're fine to play with the boys. You shouldn't be going to the locker room. It's like, okay, now this is becoming, the big theme that we're seeing in a lot of trans exclusionary policy. This is becoming a sex-based discrimination case. And at this point, like the whole, like, yeah, you can, do this league, but if you're this and you have this, it's not made up of any sort of science, because there is endless research that, points to the fact that trans athletes who are undergoing these hormone therapies, they don't have this competitive advantage that people want you to believe, because it really is all about excluding us from spaces. And not only just having to grapple with the fact that these rules are kind of obtuse, in my opinion, but again, the whole, if I want to play, I have to go into a men's locker room. I truly feel excluded at this point, and I don't feel like there is a space for me to sort of exist in the sport in a safe context, to be honest with you, because I did play in co-ed leagues, but I can tell you now that having, socially transitioned to the furthest possibility that I can, and fully living as a woman at this point, that it would be very, very challenging for me to go into a men's locker room and expect there to be not any sort of harassment or mistreatment, and when we know about the culture surrounding sports and homophobia, transphobia, so it could really threaten my own safety. And people would like to point to the fact of like, well, what about the cisgender women in the locker room, what about their safety? And it's like, okay, but your argument is predicated on the idea that I'm sort of predator. I'm just here to play hockey, you know what I mean? So there's a lot of like faults in that sort of argument too. And I mean, really, just to sum it up, it's just the overall feeling of being excluded. But I think the thing that, it's hard to wrap my head around, because I've been out as trans for, the past 4 years. It's seeing opportunities in my life, things that, where normally I could just go and grab and just do whatever I want to do. It's seeing them not only being like taken away from me, but just being told, no, you can't do that because you're this. And it's like, okay, well, that's discrimination at that point. And like, when you feel it, it doesn't feel good. You know what I mean? Like, not to make it sound obvious, but this feeling of like, there's no possibility for me to play hockey at this point. It's like, all right. I mean, it was really hard for me to want to break back into it at this point, but now since the door is closed, like, I just feel excluded at the end of the day, personally.
The hope, I guess, then becomes, in however many years when this administration leaves and maybe USA Hockey doesn't feel like the weight of a boot on its neck, maybe then we can, try and reverse some of this. But at this point, like, do you even trust them for like, okay, cool, you reverse this, but you still cowered before them initially, like, like.
Well, yeah, Trevor, it's been a serious litmus test. We've seen this in a lot of different aspects of society in the United States, especially, where it's not only just, USA Hockey buckling under this pressure from the administration, but, we're seeing it in other elements. I mean, everybody likes to make the joke every June that it's like, hey, I went to the Pride Parade and it was sponsored by Capital One, like we don't, most people that have a conscious know that like corporate pride, that rainbow capitalism, like it's not really there to win you over. It's there because finally, for the first time, people like me can be marketed to in a mass way. It would be simple to like think like, oh, if there's just a new administration, this will change. But if there's one thing I understand about like American history and American politics, you won't reach your goals without sort of demanding for it, and I'm paraphrasing the famous Frederick Douglass quote of, power concedes nothing without a demand. It never does and it never will. And, it's not only going to have to be this process of a new administration, but just seeing so many different, elements of our society just, buckling under this pleasure, you're going to have to, demand for it to return to the way it was, because not only should it be that way, but it's simply not going to return that way if you either ask politely or if you just assume it's going to. Like, it's things too, like, your passports and your self-selecting your gender on there. I firmly believe that won't get fixed until enough people raise their voice and make it someone in like Washington, D.C.'s problem of like, hey, it needs to be the way that it was again. And I think that this is a very similar example where USA Hockey buckled under this weight of this administration and even where we are culturally right now. But if it can easily buckle under that weight, I think that there's enough reason for like a cause to believe that there can be popular support to sort of undo all of this. But it is going to take, this demand of like, hey, let me be able to play the sport again. And I think really what I'm just saying is there's a lot of work to be done. And if nobody's going to be doing the work, then there's no reason for anybody to change the way things are. And I'm willing to put in the work because I would like to play the sport again, especially in a capacity where, I could feel safe to play it and just, to feel that sense of safety and that sense of belonging. I'll fight for that again because so much of that feels like it's been taken away from us for the last 2 years.
And like, obviously, like, speaking for myself, my heart does like fucking bleed for you, and I want to like fight with that with you. And
Trevor,
there are times where, being up in Canada, we kind of forget necessarily because things aren't necessarily perfect up here, but they are better in some regards.
Oh yeah.
And it does kind of, just having these conversations just does strike home, just kind of like, I don't want to brag about it, but like, it's kind of how lucky I am where I live. And it breaks my heart. Free. But yeah. It breaks my heart that I can't have friends and people that I like and people that I care about be able to share these because of where they were born,
Right. And that's why it's important that these conversations happen, Trevor, because it's kind of the effect that Heated Rivalry had on me, where seeing these closeted athletes, I saw myself in these characters. And the reason why I bring this up is that I would really hope that somebody who is in similar shoes than me understands that they're not the only one who feels alone in this, because that's why these conversations really need to happen. And, it's not only for the person who's in the similar, boat that I'm in, but it's also for people to realize that, excluding somebody from a sport, something like that, or excluding somebody or just, trying to make them feel like they don't belong, it might not affect you like now, but like these sort of things, they snowball and they begin to affect other people. So it's really just out of concern for caring for people around you. Like, you might not have like the similar experience that I do, but you do recognize and people, should recognize that just because we are different, it doesn't mean that my ability to play hockey and to feel safe while I'm doing it, that shouldn't be compromised or taken away from me just because I'm different. I shouldn't be excluded from this sort of thing. And that's where I think these conversations are important, because it's important for people because they need to know, they need to be educated. And it's also important because if there are people like me, again, similar shoes, they need to hear this too, because it's very easy right now to just sit on your phone all day and feel alone and feel like the whole world is like coming after you when, you leave the house and there are actually people that do care. And it takes people to understand that an injustice like this is taking place for them to realize like, okay, I can at least, raise my voice and say, hey, this isn't fair, and maybe do something so that, this person can play hockey again. That's really what it's all about, in my opinion.
Yeah, and that is primarily the reason why I wanted you on, just to give your story and how this is affecting you, because it's one voice, but it's one voice more that's out there, and we need as many of those voices as we can get.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it because, we do have like Harrison Brown on Instagram. He'll always share. He was the one that made me aware of this. But these sort of like, again, the cross, the juxtaposition of being a trans woman and a former hockey player, it's kind of rare. And there's plenty of us out there. I know there are, but that's just, that's why I feel like it was just very important to come on. And that's why I'm just very thankful that you let me come on and just share this, because I think people just need to hear this. So thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you again so much. I hope we can, if we ever have you on again, I hope it's under lighter details. And
of course, I'd love to come on.
Also hope, I'm still surprised this doesn't happen, but next season, I hope that either Los Angeles or Anaheim can get a PWHL takeover tour so that you can experience that league in person. Because is an incredible experience.
Oh, Anjali and I, we've been begging for that, basically, just seeing all the other cities. Like, I get it, Midwest, East Coast, and it's nice to see like go to all the different Canadian cities and like all the different provinces. But we're definitely over here like, yeah, when do we get our women's hockey? Because we can only ever watch it on a laptop screen. So
well, hopefully soon. But regardless, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your story.
Thank you for having me, Trevor.
All right. And so we're going to go cut to another break. And when we pop back in, we'll be discussing Shocker of all shockers, Heated Rivalry.
Hey folks, we're back. Thank you for hanging on. And thanks to Trevor's friend Heather for spending some time with us and answering some serious questions. But like I promised, we're going to talk about Heated Rivalry now. Yay! Everyone loves Heated Rivalry, especially Gary Bettman.
He binged it all in one night. He loves the show so much.
We heard. We were on the episode last week. We heard all about his discovery.
That's right, folks. If you have not yet heard about how Gary Bettman found out about Heated Rivalry, you can go back and listen to the exclusive clip from the beginning of our last episode. Ignore that Gary Bettman sounds a lot like Emily. That's just a coincidence.
I don't know what you're talking about. Any similarity is purely coincidental.
If anything, I feel like you should be offended that you've just got your voice equated to Gary Bettman's.
No.
How dare.
So I wanted to start by talking about how big Heated Rivalry has gotten. And we've talked, this is not new. A lot of people are familiar with the social growth, but I want to talk a little bit about what that's meant. So I think we'll start with very simply, obviously, the show has gotten some massive fans. Gary Bettman, he's said quite positive things about it. Sarah Nurse, big fan. Aaron Ambrose from Montreal. She apparently watched the show and then got tired of waiting for the ending and then downloaded and read the book in one night. So she spoiled herself on the last couple episodes, which I think is just lovely.
I love that.
Apparently it was like the whole team was watching and talking about it, because she did that interview on Merrick versus Wyszynski, I believe late last week, and they were talking about that. It's funny too, she didn't even let them finish the questions. Like, have you watched Heated Rivalry? She's like, yes, we all have thoughts. Great.
So one thing we've talked about as well is that as a critical darling, people are upset that it's not eligible for any Emmys. What you might not know is that Canada's Minister of Culture is now holding it up as an icon of Canadian content. It's got a great plot and breaks down a lot of stereotypes. It seems to have gained immense popularity. It's happening all over the world in North America and elsewhere. It is racy. People have to be ready for that. You can tell he's just a milquetoast liberal, Mark Miller, right? There has been a war over where Shane Hollander / Hudson Williams is from. Ottawa has updated their social media handles to say the home of Shane Hollander. Basically, anywhere that's ever had Hudson Williams show up for an hour has changed their social medias. His barber posted, I cut Hudson Williams' hair. I was talking to SJ about that, and I made a joke, and SJ's like, actually, yeah, the Hudson Williams barber has made posts about it on social media, and it's like,
oh my God,
good for him. You go.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it's big nationally, but it's also making waves in the NHL on what it would be like for a gay player today. So I wanted to start by going back to 2015. In 2015, there was a survey by USA Today of 35 players. Only one said he wouldn't welcome a gay player in the locker room. Brian Burke, who we've said this before, but if you don't know, Brian Burke might be one of the 200 hockey men and an old crusty asshole, but he's an unrelenting ally. His son was gay, died young, and ever since then he's marched in pride parades, and he has been just a stalwart ally of gay people. He said at the time, I don't think our players have an issue with gay players. I think the first player to come out is going to find an unbelievably welcome reception. Now, that was 11 years ago. As I was doing research for this, I found a piece from Stu Gowan in the Montreal Gazette. And in this, he talks about Tom Harrington, who used to be a CBC sports reporter, who 25 years ago, so around 2000, was doing a story on a gay NHL player. The player was prominent but keen, but got cold feet. He was working with a go-between, so he doesn't know who it is, but has been told that the player was fairly prominent in 2000. So 10 years ago, same thing. 25 years ago, same thing. So where do you think we're at today?
I mean, I would hope that it's better, and players would be more comfortable in doing so. And yet, considering the climate we keep finding ourselves in, and the comments that a lot of prominent players keep wanting to make, or at least in show their actions, Matt Kachuk, excuse me, I would almost imagine it's the opposite at this point. I think they'd be even more afraid to come on out.
Yeah, I know, at least as far as got reported, when Luke Prokop came out, the Nashville Predators were all very welcoming and supportive. But I know he's also sort of made a point to be like, yeah, I am the gay hockey player, but also like I try not to be that guy because I don't want to make people uncomfortable. I don't want to stand out. I don't want to be you don't want to be more than one standard deviation from the normal hockey man, or things get really tough.
Yeah. I think talking about Luke Prokop is very important, but it's not just Luke Prokop. He's not the only gay person who's played hockey. Far from it. There's a really good CBC article on The Current about a young former hockey player who stayed in the closet, who got a panic attack from watching the show.
Yeah.
I'm just pulling this up here. I knew watching Heated Rivalry was risky. I didn't expect it to crack me wide open. Some stories don't feel like fiction. They feel like memories carried deep in your soul. I have immense gratitude for the cast and crew of Heated Rivalry, to Rachel Reed for writing the beautiful story and getting it across the goal line, to Jacob Tierney for weaving it together with incredible delicacy and care, and ultimately to Connor Story, Hudson William, Francois Arnault, and Robbie GK for giving me back something I thought was lost forever. I think that's a pretty beautiful statement. Brock McGillis, also a former pro player, never in the NHL, also openly gay today, said the same thing.
Yeah, I know Zach Sullivan, who is an out bisexual player in, I think, the IHL over in the UK, has said that, he is glad that this story is out there, but it was really traumatic for him because he doesn't feel like it accurately portrayed the trauma of being a closeted hockey player. And, I think there's a lot there. On one hand, this is based on a romance novel. Like it wasn't going to get heavy. It wasn't supposed to be realistic.
Mm-hmm.
But also, that's a valid point for him, that he is, he lived this story basically, and it didn't go like that for him. People were weird in the comments on his articles and his posts about it, which, I mean, that's neither here nor there, but it's
know that
just another perspective.
Yeah. And I think that's an important perspective. Hudson Williams has shared that active sports players have reached out to Rachel Reed regarding the show, and some of those messages were forwarded along to him. It sounds like they are working, to support those players, and obviously they're probably grateful for these stories being told. But there's the other side of it as well. There's the business side. The Senators have the rights to make Hollander and Rosenov Sens jerseys, and they're flying off the shelf. And, it wasn't right away that they announced that the proceeds for those were going to be donated to Ottawa Pride Hockey, which is an organization in the city of Ottawa. It did come out after, but if you go check Ottawa Pride Hockey's Instagram, you'll see that they weren't aware of this when the jerseys were announced. And my guess is there was a little bit of backpedaling at the Sens offices once they got asked.
Yeah. But, they did end up making the right call eventually. Would have been nice if that had been the intention all along, but they got there.
Now, would this be a little bit better if they hadn't just signed James Reimer?
Yeah.
Anyway, there was also the Empty Netters podcast, which is run by former hockey players Dan and Chris Bowers. They got a lot of attention for being very into Heated Rivalry, but Outsports ran a article claiming that, and saying they'd seen the text that they were expressing in text messages before they saw the show, that it was, quote, trash, and that the creators were losers and cowards.
Yeah, I think there was something in there about, like, giving in to the blue-haired liberals or something, which was really just such a line.
How internet pilled can you be? Good Lord.
One gay, I'm quoting from the Outsports article right now by Sid Ziegler, who, by the way, is just a great journalist for LGBTQ plus issues in sports. If you're not reading Outsports, you should be. One gay hockey player in LA who asked to remain anonymous told Outsports he was disappointed but not surprised. His comments in private are why so many people are still scared to come out. It's very disappointing to hear.
And I will say, I've never listened to Empty Netters, but it's one of those things that if you're on hockey-related social media, that content shows up every now and then. They've been wildly misogynistic and gross before. I think people in the hockey community kind of knew that was maybe not the right podcast to be going to for straight men react to Heated Rivalry, but there were so many Heated Rivalry fans who are coming to hockey and so excited about the idea that, these hockey people were embracing the story, and then to get burned like that, I think it sucks. And I think it's not helping those people find a spot in hockey where they want to be. It would be great if, just like Gary Bettman wants, we get new fans. But, finding out that these guys that you thought were super accepting and excited about the show are actually kind of shitty. It sucks.
I imagine, too, it's just also a harsh reality of, people on the outside can promote being as inclusive as they are, but you don't know what they're whispering behind closed doors.
Yeah.
So
there's really no way to obviously know what they would say behind closed doors, but I think we should look at what they've said up front. So a few players have gotten on the record around Heated Rivalry. Toronto Maple Leafs defender Morgan Rielly has noted that he intends to watch the series, as his wife, famous figure skater Tessa Virtue, has put it on their to-watch list. Jake DeBrusk. Yeah. Jake DeBrusk, I think, had a really good thing to say. So Vancouver Canucks player. I think any awareness is always good. And I think that's something where maybe for the game of hockey, maybe it makes everyone feel more comfortable, makes it less awkward or wrong or whatever to talk about. He's a hockey player. It's not great. It's just simple things like putting rainbow pride tape on your stick. It doesn't mean much to me, but I know it might mean something to someone else. And I think it's one of those shows that just opens up another avenue for different fans of the game. I think that's a pretty good statement by a hockey player with that qualifier.
Important caveat, but
yeah.
What I like about it is that it shows empathy. Right?
Yeah.
Putting pride tape on the stick might not mean anything to him, but it means something to someone. In a world where empathy has been attacked, I think that's really important. There was an okay statement by Charlie McAvoy about, I hear it's a good show. I hear people like it. Maybe some new people will come to the games. But there's only really been one group of players that have been pretty firmly in favor of it, and I'm not saying this just because I'm a fan, the Montreal Canadiens. So Caden Goulet played junior with Luke Prokop. I played with Luke Prokop and grew up with him for a long time. I know he was kind of the first one to come out under an NHL contract. I think the time will come when someone will come out and just open it up for everyone. I definitely think that show Heated Rivalry is huge for that community. I haven't watched it. I'm not a huge TV guy, but it's a good show for that kind of stuff. Good for the community. Goulet said it wouldn't be a problem with openly gay players with the Canadiens. I know everyone would be supportive. Jake Evans, we're all open in here and welcoming. Martin St. Louis, also open and welcoming. And then Nick Suzuki was on TV in Quebec and said, I've heard about it. I think we all have. It's kind of taken the world by storm. It's brought a lot of new audiences to hockey, which has been awesome. As a team, I think we're well prepared to welcome anyone that would come out. I think we're a very open group. we're always accepting of each other. That wouldn't change if someone came out and was on our team or another team. And given the amount of silence that comes out of some players, I think, and that is a lot of players on one team. Alexandre Texier also said similar in French in the interview. I think if there is at least a team out there where you're getting that statement from multiple players, maybe that team means it. But I'm not sure. I guess we won't know until it happens. And I think that if there is an NHL player out there who is in the closet, I hope that one day he decides to show the world, who they are. There's a quote that's always resonated with me from Brooklyn Nine-Nine of all places, but it's whenever someone chooses to show the world who they truly are, it becomes a more beautiful place. And I think that's very good.
Yeah.
So, just a little bit of a look into sort of how Heated Rivalry is hitting the hockey community broadly, and the good and the bad. But it's definitely made waves, and I think in a community that needs waves made on this subject, I think that is a good thing.
Yes, I think absolutely any conversation is an improvement from where it might have been.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And then, too, of course, the hope always could then be, as soon as you get one player who comes out and is comfortable being who they are to the public, that can encourage more players to do so. And it's not just one, it's two. It's not just two. We just got to hope that sooner or later someone decides to be that one.
Yep.
And I cannot wait to cheer for that one, no matter what team they play for.
Yeah, I think the day is coming. I hope it comes. It would be good if it came soon, but I guess we'll see. Any final thoughts, or shall I take us home?
I think take us home.
Take us home.
Folks, thank you so much for listening. This has been the Neutral Zone Hotel, which is written, produced, and hosted by us, the Neutral Zone Hotel crew. We're on Bluesky and YouTube at Neutral Zone Hotel. 5 stars on the podcast platform, thumbs up, whatever it is you need to do to show you're having a good time. You can hang out with us by joining our Discord at neutralzonehotel.com/Discord. We'd love to have you. And there's probably some other stuff I'm supposed to say, but this has been long enough. So thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next week.